In this video, I'm going to talk about another technical analysis indicator that I use. Now, I have a lot of experience analyzing markets outside of cryptocurrency even, so stock markets, Forex and stuff like that. So I already know about a lot of different technical indicators. One thing I noticed with meme coins is a lot of them don't really work as well because we're talking about very low liquidity. A few buys or sells could really move our market. Some of these coins have only literally just launched seconds or minutes ago. So it's not really the same. However, once a listing becomes established, a meme coin becomes more established, then it works a little bit better. But there are definitely a few that I find very useful. Now, some that I've already discussed here are the volume bars, which you already know about, looking at the transactions below to get an idea of any big buys, sells, purchases. Looking at liquidity, you already know about. Some of the trend lines as well, so horizontal support, psychological levels. We've talked about breaking trends, stuff like that. One we haven't really discussed, and it's the only momentum oscillator I find useful. It's called the RSI. So I'll explain it to you right now. Basically, with the RSI, it's a momentum oscillator. You don't need to lose sleep over exactly what this means. Basically, it just gives us an idea of the strength of our market, the momentum of our market, whether it's positive or negative. And there's another one called the MACD as well, which I've not found useful at all with meme coins. But the RSI kind of tells us where things might be a little bit too hot in the market, too overbought or too oversold, because the momentum is pushing too much one way. And sometimes that gives us opportunities. So between these purple lines, anything above the top line is overbought. Let me just see if I can mark it on here. So anything above this line is overbought. Anything above this line is oversold. So the first thing you can use this for is if a market's too heated, it's too overbought, you might expect a pullback. Now, nothing is very accurate with meme coins, so don't expect this to be either. But otherwise, when things are going up or down in meme coins, it's very, very hard, apart from the levels and stuff I've shown you already. It's otherwise really hard to pick where there might be a top or a bottom, because you don't know 10 seconds later if somebody's going to buy one of these coins and spend 10,000 if they want to. You have no idea. So it's very, very difficult. But this gives us a little bit of an idea. So this is a bit of a silly collection that I was just watching at the moment, and I did a quick flip in from these lows. Only because it was a good setup, which I'll show you at the moment. I'll show you in a minute with RSI. But let me show you another one, GameStop. Here, this is a bigger one, is a bigger collection, which I've discussed before in this training. And this is, well, it got to about over 80 million. But the reason I'm showing you it here is because it's more useful with the RSI. So if you type in RSI here, Relative Strength Index, and click on it in the Indicators tab, you'll see it on your chart. So you can see here where we went into overbought territory, it actually perfectly coincided with the peak. So that's very useful. And this is on a 5-minute chart, and you can obviously change time frames here. So that's very useful that it picked that up. But you can see here, it kind of picked up that we were overbought a little bit. So we had a bit of a pullback, but we still ran after that. So it's not always accurate, but you can see it picked up this peak as well. So it does help. And then on the lows, if something's oversold, might be a buying opportunity, it does pick on them too. So don't use this as an indicator to buy and sell, but use it as an indicator to give you an idea. If you're looking to hop into the market, are you somewhere in the middle, which is kind of safe? Are you buying when it's already overheated? Or are you buying when it's actually been destroyed a little bit, which is what you want. When you're buying a dip, you want it to be dipping on the momentum as well. That kind of helps you with your decision, along with obviously the volume and the structural trend lines we've talked about before. But let me show you how it was useful in this trade. There's something called momentum divergence. Again, don't lose sleep over stuff like this. This is quite advanced, but it's a good little trick that I wanted to show you. So when things are getting panic sold off, remember I talk about the panic dip strategy, which you'll see in the playbook. Things are going down, but how do you know how far they're going to go down before we get a little bit of a reversal, a bit of a flip that we could trade into? So every peak that goes down, what you usually see with RSI, you can see at the bottom, the peaks get lower and lower. So this peak, and this peak. So we've seen it get it lower, lower, lower on the momentum. But then this low was the same, if not lower on the chart. It was actually a lower price. and I got in just after this. But notice on the momentum was going the other way. So it's the opposite. So the price is going down, but momentum, MOM, is going up. This is divergence. It suggests there might be a change in trend. So that's why I jumped in. And it was a nice little trade. I didn't get a maximum 2x, nowhere near. I probably got like a 0.5x or something, but it's still a nice little trade there. And that's because I watched the RSI to try and time my entry. The other way you could do it is, as I show in the panic dip strategy, just wait for price to kind of go sideways, which it was doing there. And you're never going to get 100% right. People can sell off after that too. Just because the RSI is changing doesn't mean anything. It just increases our probability a little bit that it might be going in our direction. Let me show you something else interesting. By the way, this is on a 1 second chart. If we go on a 1 minute chart, the RSI barely exists on it. So we have to rely on a 1 second chart. And the RSI is very noisy on a 1 second chart. So it's not that reliable. So just, like I said, just keep that in mind. Anyway, we're going up and we're getting higher and higher and higher peaks. But notice on the momentum, we're getting lower and lower and lower. This warned me here that actually we might be out of steam. We're already pushing too far, too fast. Now, this could easily pull back and then shoot off to 300. I don't know that for sure. But I was considering slowly selling my position here, which I did. And because it kind of pulled back quite quickly, that's why I didn't really make that much profit on this trade. It was still all right trade, but it wasn't amazing. But you never know which ones are going to run higher, because obviously the high here was all the way at 400-500. So if we got a bit more momentum and a bit more buying pressure, it could have done a lot better. But anyway, now it's selling off. And by the way, when markets are trending very clearly downwards or very clearly upwards, momentum indicators like the RSI, like this one below, very useful. But when markets are going sideways and choppy and doing nothing, these are not useful at all. So completely ignore them. You're only using them when, let's say, you're in a really good trade and it's going up high and you're like, might be a good time to sell. Well, have a quick look at the RSI. If that's confirming that, yeah, actually it is getting a little bit heated, then yeah, probably consider that. Let's go into a 15-minute chart, because on these longer time frames, you can go on wider charts and then you get less signals, which sometimes helps. You can see here, by the way, we were very overbought at 20 million, but it wasn't a good signal. Yes, we got a bit of a pullback to 18, but then we carried pushing on. So you have to be very, very careful with this. Like I said, it's not always going to be accurate, but it gives you an idea of where you might be in the market. Like if you're selling at a time when the RSI is kind of heated, that's probably a better time to sell. Notice, by the way, in this particular one, the RSI getting below the middle line now and staying there is not a good sign for GameStop, by the way. You kind of want it in the upper half. You can see here, all the way from when it was, 5 million? It was always in the upper half. This is another trick with the RSI as well. The collections that tend to be a little bit more pumpy, they kind of stay in that region and they don't stay in the lower region too long. If this stays in the lower region going forward, we might still be getting more dip, which we obviously don't want to see if you're a GameStop investor. But I'm personally not in this anymore. I may buy in, if I get a good opportunity. But that's it. So that's the RSI. So you can add it as an extra tool in your arsenal. And like I said, it's sometimes useful. Unfortunately, with meme coins, there isn't much else in terms of all of these different indicators. None of them, I've been through all of them, and I use a lot of indicators generally. Well, I don't use a lot now, but I have used a lot in the past. So I really do know what's useful and what's not. And unfortunately, a lot of the others aren't. So I wouldn't waste time with those. At the end of the day, you mainly want to watch price action with the naked eye and make decisions and use your instinct as you get more experience. These are just tools that help increase our probability. That's all. Thanks for listening.